Hi, I'm going to do a keynote presentation that I did in January 2020 for the Texas Association of Conventions and Visitors Bureaus. And I hope this is helpful, and I hope that I can do more of these once you watch this. So I'm going to share this application. Sit back, relax, and let me tell you what you're going to learn. So first of all, you're going to learn how you can make some money. In fact, you can actually win a signed copy of whichever book you want. I'll let you pick it out. I have 5 books out. You can pick whichever one you want. So pay attention, because I'll tell you how to do this at the very end. This is what you're going to get out of it. When you look at a graphic like this, you immediately should be thinking things like improve, increase, enhance, but the arrow is going up in the right direction. Things are getting better. And that is exactly what's going to happen to you. You're going to be a better communicator. You're going to be a better salesperson. You're going to be a better spouse. You'll be a better parent. This isn't just about business. This is about changing people's lives, about making things about other people. You're going to see this graphic quite a bit in pretty much everything I do. This is you over on the right. Now, whether you're in a business mode or you're in a personal mode, when you're trying to communicate something, and I experience this daily, it's so clear in your head. And when you're articulating it, you understand exactly what you're saying. It's very well organized. It's just as crisp and clean as possible. But your audience is more likely than not, it looks like that to them. It's not organized. It's confusing. And they're trying to figure out, why do they care and what's in it for them? So what this is going to teach you is how to have both brains looking like the one on the right. You want people to receive your message as intended. So this is the agenda. The first thing I'm going to do is just tell you the history of all this, like how did all this come about? And then we're going to get into some neuroscience. Specifically, we're going to talk about why people don't like salespeople, the power of 3s or the rule of 3s, why things grouped in 3s, your brain just loves it. We're going to talk about the irony of a goldfish having an 8-second attention span, which is longer than ours today. And then we're going to talk about memorization, how you can remember names and grocery lists and things so much better. And what does that have to do with Visnostics? Well, you'll learn that. And then we're actually going to talk about Visnostics. Visnostics is a word that's trademarked that stands for Visualization Diagnostics. And this graphic represents it. See the girl looking up, and that's what happens when you're having a visualization. You're looking up, sometimes to the right, sometimes to the left, back and forth, but you're visualizing something. So the girl represents visualization. The doctor has to diagnose what's wrong with you, right? And so the doctor represents a diagnostics taking place. And then the graphic below, those little cartoon guys have what's called statement bubbles. So those 3 pictures together represent a Visnostics statement, which is what you're going to learn how to do. Acronyms are bad. You'll notice that everything so far has been graphics on my agenda. RTH is up here for a reason, because that's the name of it. RTH, the Visnostic RTH formula, but you're going to learn how you're actually going to remember it. But this is going to make you a ton of money. But you have to know all the science before the RTH formula actually means anything to you. Once we're done with this presentation, you will be able to make better connections faster, longer, stronger, moving forward in your life. It's really amazing. So how did this crazy thing happen? I was selling something that was the easiest thing I've ever sold in my life. It really was like selling $10 bills for $1. The return on investment was high. Most of the time I didn't get through my presentation because people were saying, okay, how do we get this? They wanted it. And I was presenting to a guy that had been a customer of mine for years. He's bought from me other places, and he fell asleep during the presentation. I couldn't believe it. Nobody had ever done that before. And so I went and tapped on, and he was mortified, you know, when I woke him up, and he said, I'm so sorry. I worked all night. I'm so tired. Come back tomorrow and it'll be better. And so I came back the next day. I went through the whole process again. And this time he was taking really, enthusiastic notes. And so I wanted to know what was resonating with him. So I walked over there to see what he was writing down. It was his grocery list. So that's twice now. I'm selling $10 bills for $1, and this guy is not engaged with me at all. He doesn't care. And I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. But I am taking accountability. I am doing something wrong. And he told me, sorry, Kim, I'm not going to buy from you. I don't have the budget. Things are really bad at work right now anyway. I'm worried about my job. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasted your time. And I left there with I was just stunned. I mean, have you ever had one of those moments where you look back and go, why did I act that way? Why didn't I say this? Why didn't I do that? Well, that was this scenario. I just walked out like a zombie. But the one thing that is wired in me is no means try harder. Something I did was wrong. And I started analyzing my presentation and looking at it. And it was great because it was about me and the company and how great we were and how our, stock prices were going up and our growth year over year and quarter over quarter and, blah, 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 blah. And then I realized it's boring. He's got other problems. He just told me you had problems. So why does he care about this? And so I started thinking, all of the stuff that I talk about in the presentation was what we did, our features and functions, our history. It was all about me. But what was missing was it didn't tell him why he should care. So I sat down with each one of my company's bullets and I tried to translate it into, okay, this is what we do, but what's he going to get? And I started making these statements. And don't even try and strain your, I know you're trying to strain your eyes, don't. This is an actual picture of the first document that I ever created. This was so long ago. And so I turned all the things, this big thing over here on the right. These are statements. And I called him back up and I said, I know you have to eat, so can I take you to lunch? And he said, well, as long as you know that I don't have any money and I'm not going to buy it, I do need to eat. So yeah, I'll go out to lunch with you, but I'm not buying. So I said, no problem. So my treat. So I took him out and I said, look, I am sorry that I wasted your time. I know you're going through something big right now. And so I want to try something. I want your advice because I want to be better at what I do. And I think you could help me. And so while he was eating his lunch, I said, I'm going to make a statement and I want you to respond with, I can say this today. I wish I could say this today, or it's not important, not applicable. And see, over here on the left are the 3 columns. So I had this printed out and all I had to do was check mark whichever one he said. What shocked me was on the very first one, he started talking and talking, and I couldn't have asked questions to have gotten this kind of response. But he started telling me, my statement was something like, backups are an easy and fast process. Restoring backups is a fast and easy process. And I saw his eyes moving around, and I had just taken a class on body language, and that meant that he was engaged and he was listening to me and he was thinking. And he talked forever. He told me about an email that had been lost by the CEO, and his team in IT could not restore it. They couldn't find it, and then they couldn't restore it. And so at the highest level of the company, their department is considered incompetent, and it was a critical email he needed back. So this was bad news for him. That's why he was working all night. Someone got fired, and he was like, what's the next one? Immediately, he was like, what's the next one? So I did the next. And by the third one, he pushed his plate aside and he said, can I assume you can do all this? And I said, well, yes. And he goes, why didn't you tell me this? And I said, I did twice. And what I realized in this moment is it's not what you say, it's how you said it. So I said the same thing, but I was focused in on here's what we do and expected him to translate it into those statements. And he was distracted, and it's too much work. So I did that translation for him. And now all of a sudden he was engaged, and now he saw the value. And why are we doing this to people? Scientifically, what I've learned is you have cognitive. Cognitive is what you know. It's like today, you're learning something. This is a cognitive experience for you. The metacognitive is when you start translating that and going, this is the areas I'm weak, this is where I'm strong, this is what I can do different. Now that I know this information, this is how I can apply it. And now I have a better understanding of my weaknesses, and I acknowledge it, and now I know how I can make them into strengths. That's the metacognitive. So think about that. If we're selling features and functions and service and all that, we're selling at a cognitive level. But our buyers are buying at a metacognitive level. Why is our messaging written in a cognitive when they buy in a metacognitive? See? So that's where Visnostics is evolved. And as one day I was driving from Austin to Dallas, and I was listening to Michael Bosworth's book. By the way, Michael Bosworth actually wrote my foreword. Michael Bosworth wrote a book called What Great Salespeople Do, and it was about the neuroscience. And all my life, all my managers would say things to me like, oh my gosh, you know, you're so lucky. Your timing is so good. They would discount my skills and chalk it off to, you know, I was a lucky person. That's why I was selling so much. But when I listened to his book, I got excited because I realized there was science behind what I did. And his book explained about dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin and endorphins. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that I was doing this brain chemistry to my clients. It got very exciting. So let's talk a little bit about body language. Most of you guys have had some kind of neurolinguistic education and training. And in those training, they'll talk to you about eye movement. And a lot of times, and you'll read different things, you know, Google it, you'll see all the different kinds of opinions out there. They'll say things like, oh, if you look up to the left, or if they look up to the right, well, is it your left or my right? That's where people start getting confused. You know, which direction are they looking? It's a lie if they look up and to the left or to the right. It's a lie. Well, here's the reality of that. Before someone lies, they have to have a visualization. So they're going to visualize the lie before they say it. So that part's true. But not every time someone's looking up are they lying. Every time they look up, they're having a visualization. This is important for some of the exercises we're going to go over in a minute. So, well, in a minute, here we are. We're going to do, this is an exercise I do all the time, and I love it. I've been doing this since 2009, and it is phenomenal. It teaches you so much about people. And so when I'm doing a keynote, I will say, I'm going to say a word, and I want you to describe what you see. What visualization you get. What do you see? I will say this over and over again. Tell me what you see when you hear this word. And people still don't follow instructions. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But what'll happen is I'll say the word money. And I tell people you only have 5 seconds. So then I cut them off at 5 seconds. And there's still a bunch of people talking, always. And so I'll start talking again because I gave them 5 seconds. And I'll talk, and they're still talking. They're ignoring me. And the people that are watching me and listening, we all start making fun of them. And I explain that those people just had a rush of brain chemistry, and they can't control themselves. They can't help themselves. When you trigger, just like that guy, he triggered a visualization and he just kept talking. I didn't have to ask any questions. I didn't have to qualify. Your brain chemistry makes you talk. It's crazy when you watch it happen. But then back to this exercise. Then I say a lot of people see green or see a color. So how many people see colors? Some people, this is the most common one. They see a dollar sign or cash or coins or something like that. This is the most common. But then other people will see like their house, a bank building, college. They'll see something physical, a car, a RV, a boat, something physical, like a materialistic thing. Some people, it's not a materialistic thing, but they see a bill, a mortgage payment, a student debt. Other people see something positive like Bitcoin or savings account or investments, 401k, things like that. Other people, they get emotional. Like I had one girl start crying. As soon as I said, it was so fast how she burst into tears. Some people, even though I say, tell me what you see, what you visualize, they will tell me what they feel instead. And when feelings get triggered, they talk the longest. So I've had people tell me it's evil, money is awful, evil, terrible, horrible things. I've had other people go, oh my gosh, travel, fun, shopping. They get excited and it's a positive thing. It's a word we all use every day. How can so many people feel and see so many different things with one word? money. So I usually ask people, what else do they see? And there's always other things, new things. So there's a big lesson in this exercise. Words are subjective. So recently I had this reader, and he's an artist, and he told me that Visnostics weren't working for him because this kind of blew up on him. And he told a guy, his Visnostics statement was, and don't panic, you're going to learn how to do this. His Visnostics statement was, tell me about a photo that changed your life. And the guy just went on a rampage about, it was something evil, and it would have to be a photograph of something traumatic about it, bad that happened with his family to affect him like that. And he goes, man, I didn't think it would trigger negative. I thought it'd trigger positive. And I said, you used a word in your statement, changed, and it's subjective. Some people are going to think good thoughts. Some people are going to see bad thoughts. If you want him to see a good thought, then guide his visualization. So say, tell me about a photograph that improved, not changed, improved your life. So we have to be careful with every single word we say, because words are subjective. And if you're presenting and you're trying to talk money and you want them to see a dollar sign, well, then you better have graphics that match so that you guide them towards that dollar sign instead of a bag of cash or a bank building. You see? The other thing that is, and this is the most important, if your slides look like this guy's slides, in this drawing, why are you using words? Because nobody, since 2009 when I started doing this, nobody says that they see the letters M-O-N-E-Y. Nobody. Because our brains are going to take the letters and translate it into words, translate it into sentences, translate it into paragraph, and then translate it again into why they care. Again, this is cognitive stuff. We've got to translate it into metacognitive, and our graphics must match so that our clients will make sure that they see what we want them to see, but also they retain it when there's a graphic. So there's a guy, and you should look this up on YouTube. It's awesome. His name is Morris Macy, and he has this thing on YouTube. It's from the 80s, and it's called You Are Who You Are Because of Where You Were When. And he talks super fast, and it is fascinating how different things, like you've taken Myers-Briggs, most likely. So I'm an ENTJ, by the way. But what are your personality types, and what are you in the right career for you? And then there's DISC, which I'm very partial to. I'm a high D, high I, by the way. And then this is interesting. This graphic, I've been told people are offended by this graphic, this cartoon. It's in the book. Quit thinking and being so defensive. Biologically, men and women are different. It's biologically understandable that we think different. So anyone that's in a marriage will tell you this is true. And if you want your marriage to be better, Visnostics is going to help you, because you're going to get, instead of trying to force your brain into your spouse's brain, you'll try and understand their brain better. The next thing is generations. And Morris Macy talks a lot about the generation differences. Did you know that Gen Zs and millennials are the biggest difference in generations ever to take place? Gen Zs have a very low attention span. Millennials do not get Gen Zs. They're so close in age, and yet they don't understand each other. And if you think about how the world has changed, millennials had to stand in line at Blockbuster. They had to know that if they wanted to watch a Christmas movie, they better have a VCR tape or a DVD in order to see it. Gen Zs have never experienced that. They're an on-demand generation. Oh my gosh. Even colleges. Millennials, when they went to college, a lot of their grades were based upon attendance. Gen Zs, it's not about attendance. You can get your on-demand or watch your replay. You don't even have to leave your dorm room anymore, because food can be delivered to your dorm room. The world is so different with Gen Zs than millennials. So because of that, words are going to be even more subjective depending on who you were when. You are who you are because of where you were when. But the lessons here are, don't use bullets with letters, use graphics. You'll notice that most of my slides have very little words, if any at all. They're focused in on the graphics, which triggers me as a speaker to know what to say. If you're talking with bullets and words and graphs and charts, you're talking vendor speak. You're talking at a cognitive level. You've got to get at the metacognitive level. And we're going to call that client speak. So cognitive is vendor speak. Metacognitive is client speak. And this is a great example. I wanted to give you a real world example on this. This was circulating on Facebook. It's pretty funny, but it was strategically placed in a singles ad. And y'all can read this just as easily as I can read it to you. But here's the part that you didn't know. So the results were they had 1,500 men calling about this single Black female to find out that they were calling the Humane Society in Atlanta about an 8-week-old Black Labrador. And yes, it did find a good home. So in the Visitor Bureau, this is a wonderful graphic representing what? And so I put this up during this presentation and some people booed. Like a Texas Tech person, a Texas Tech graduate looked at this as a UT emblem, University of Texas in Austin, not a Texas symbol, but a rival. And so that's why some people were booing. Other people, like environmentalists, will look at this and go, they're polluting the earth, the gases, and they're hurting our environment. And, people will look at this differently. This picture, this simple picture, when you're trying to say, come and visit us, come and see us. So you have to be careful, even using a photograph, that you're not at a cognitive level and expecting your audience to interpret it the way you want it. So if you want this to say, come visit Texas, then you're going to have those words to match it. Otherwise, people are going to think this has something to do with UT or, other things. So I love this graphic. It's one of my favorite ones that I saw. This is representing the city of Fort Worth because of the level of details. First of all, for those that don't know, these Longhorns are driven down the streets twice a day in the city of Fort Worth, and it's a big tourist thing. And these are gentle creatures, but not everyone, look at those horns. Some people are kind of scared, but look at the children. If they were dangerous, there would be children there. Look at all the people capturing the moment. Their cameras are out. This is an Instagram moment, and this one all over the internet. Look at the buildings, the historical buildings. Look at the streets, these brick streets. This is so authentic, Texas, so authentic. The cowboys on the horses. This says so much about the culture, the environment, the experience, and even without words, it makes you want to be there. So let's talk about Pavlov's dog. I'm not really shifting. The reality is people don't like salespeople. And because of that, they're repulsed by salespeople. If you get a telemarketer call, you ignore it, right? You don't go, oh, good, it's a telemarketer. I can't wait to answer this call. So how do we turn into the bell? So Pavlov's dog, he rang the bell, and gave the dog food, meat, actually. And so every time he rang the bell, the dog would salivate because the dog related the bell to meaning he was about to get fed. Right now, salespeople are the bell and makes people run. We want to be the bell and make people salivate. We want to make people want to see us. When they see our name pop up on an email, when they see our name pop up on a phone, we want people to be excited to talk to us. How do we do that? Well, Visnostics. So what happens, and the reason people are so anti-salespeople, is the fight or flight. We do not want to be persuaded. If you have a Facebook account, you cannot argue with us, especially during a political season. You've got everybody trying to convince each other that they're wrong, the other people are wrong and they're right, and they should change their beliefs. How well is that working out for everyone? Not well at all, because we don't want to be persuaded to think a different way, because that would be admitting we're wrong. We don't like to do that either. The only way you can get people to really embrace and change is if it's their idea. But Visnostics will teach you how to do that. But first, before we can do that, we have got to disengage this fight or flight. So as you are a salesperson or a spouse or whatever it is, people people don't want to be persuaded, and you want to get your way, the first thing you have to do is disengage the fight or flight. And by the way, if you don't disengage this right away, it's almost impossible to reverse it. Once it's engaged, it's almost impossible to turn it off. There's a book that was written in the 1920s, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. In my opinion, they should be teaching this in kindergarten. This is the best book I've ever read in my life. Because in a nutshell, it talks about dogs. Why do we love dogs? It doesn't matter if you're fat, old, ugly. You walk in the door, those dogs are so excited that you're home. They have unconditional enthusiasm and love for you. And that's what we should be showing our clients. This picture over here on the left is an actual brain scan of oxytocin being released, where the mother is kissing her baby. The baby is getting the affection and it's having a release, and the mother is giving the affection and getting the release. All of this ties into Visnostics because this is brain chemistry. So in How to Win Friends and Influence People, I mean, this is a great book, but in a nutshell, it says, nothing sounds sweeter than the sound of your own name. Nothing sounds sweeter than the sound of your own voice. So if you're talking about yourself and your product and your company, people are trying to, they would rather chew off a body part and get away from you than listen to you. But if you make your presentation or your conversation about them, talking at the metacognitive level, then all of a sudden the brain chemistry is completely different. All right, so right now we're going to shift again to the power of threes. And these are some examples. And you'll see this now that you learn about it, you'll notice it more in ads. Right now, GMC, you can go to YouTube and look this up. Their first line out of it is, the rule of threes says, da, 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 that things are better in threes. So take a look at that ad, but you'll notice that cars, tires, pants, suits, they're usually advertised in threes. And if you take a decorating course, they'll teach you that although you want by nature to be symmetrical, your brain doesn't like it. Your brain would rather things be asymmetrical, and they'll teach you how to decorate using threes. In sales, you've been taught, do not ask close-ended questions. A close-ended question is a yes or no response. And our brains are wired, when we start getting questions, the fight or flight is triggered, and people will want to say no to get away from it. I am so anti-questions. I've been part of the consultative selling era, and I can tell you people looked at their watch and they were like, how much longer? How many more do you have? I've really got to go. They lose interest really fast. If you ever got great support and they tell you, you know, would you like to do a survey at the end? Chances are that you didn't do it. 2% people do it. They don't like questions. We don't like questions. The census came out. We didn't go rush home to go do the census either, did we? We don't like questions. And RFPs are awesome. An awesome RFP is request for proposal. Most of the time, they'll give you a spec and you respond accordingly. And what happens in the decision-making process, and this is really important to understand scientifically, in the decision-making process, people are there to eliminate first. That's the first stage. How do we get this, you know, these 10 vendors that have given us a quote, how do we get them down to 2? So they'll eliminate. If you give them one choice, their brain is, which one of these vendors am I going to pick? If you give them 3 choices, their brain chemistry and their thought process changes, because now they're looking at your 3 options going, which of these options do I want? Your chances of being chosen in an RFP, if you give 3 options, is so much higher than if you only respond to the original request. And phone numbers. Most of the time, people can remember the area code in the first 3 digits. When they forget, the numbers that they forget are the ones that are in 4. That 1 extra digit makes a huge difference to our brain. And then the rule of, since we're talking about the rule of threes, I want to get into another topic, which is, look at these 2 sets. They both represent the same thing, but do you find your eye going to the right? The reason that you're doing that is because drawings are exaggerations. You see all the little lines and the wrinkles and the details and the hands. It's so much more obvious, especially if it's in black and white. And this is a really important principle. I've had people make comments about the pictures in the books. It's done for a reason. These are drawings that are not only black and white on purpose, but there's also a style to the artwork that is hypnotic, which you can't do with a photograph. So what does this matter? That matters because if you're trying to match graphics with your words, make sure they're hypnotic, make sure that they're more impactful. Choose the one that's going to make people remember. You'll remember the one on the right more than you will the one on the left. And here's why it's important. Our world has changed so much. We are getting pounded with data. I mean, my phone, let's see. Yeah, here's a screenshot of my phone. That's how many unread emails I have. And so it's not because I'm mean or I'm lazy. I don't have time. You remember that first graphic that I showed that had all of the social medias? The very first slide I showed you? There's so many ways that people can communicate. Text message, phone, cell phone, email, Instagram, Messenger on Facebook, and I can go on and on and on. And because of that, our attention spans have shrunk. And in just 2000, before all of this insanity and all these apps and things took off, we had a 12-second attention span. And they know this because of how long people would stay on websites. It got down to 9 seconds in the last few years. And today, it's 3 seconds. You have 3 seconds. So if you're starting your emails with, my name is, my company does, I would like to, you've lost them. You're in the 70,000 emails because you get the little preview, right? You get about 1 sentence to preview. You're getting in your next. If you don't capture their attention in the first sentence, you probably are going to get ignored. Not because people are rude, because they're overwhelmed. I mean, I talked to you about the goldfish. The goldfish attention span is 9 seconds. 9 seconds. And ours is 3. The reason the goldfish hasn't changed is his environment. He still has that little bowl that he's swimming around in. He doesn't have Instagram and Facebook blasting him with data. So his 9 second attention span is going to be that way 20 years from now as well. And this is why our brains are translating constantly. As you know, these are binary numbers, and this actually says something. And I have an exercise in the book where I ask people to translate binary code. And very few people do it. I mean, I can count on 2 hands out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of readers. I can count on 2 hands people have done this exercise, because you're forcing people to have to go do a translation and they don't want to do it. So if you have a bunch of words on a brochure, in a PowerPoint, you're doing the same thing. You're forcing them to have to translate that from the cognitive to the metacognitive. And we've got to change that. And just so you know, all of those, I like to be nice, all of those binary letters or numbers, the zeros and the ones, translate into people avoid translation. So let's talk a little bit about memory and how the brain works. I can't remember names. That's cognitive. Actually, that's metacognitive. Remembering people's names is cognitive. Knowing that you have a hard time remembering names is being in touch with your metacognitive. So I went and took a class on memorization, and one of the ways that they taught you, they said, we're going to start you out with a grocery list with 20 items. I think we started out with 10, we got up to 20, and they had you make your list and then envision these items on your body, and you had to stand up in front of the class and tell everyone what was on your list. And what they were doing was they were teaching you visualization. If you can visualize it, you will remember it. Visnostics stands for Visualization Diagnostics. The Viz in Visnostics is so important. And what we're trying to teach you is, how do you get your clients to visualize their life better with you in it? And then the other principle is our minds prefer movement. Remember when you were a kid and you walked in and there was a projector or a TV and VCR? You were so excited when you walked in the classroom and saw that, because you knew you were going to get to see a movie or a video, right? And our brains love it. So why, when you land on your website, do people see static data? If you'll notice, most people are putting videos on the first. Go to dineexec.com. You have to use a computer, not a phone. But when you go there, you'll see it's all full of videos. It's a new and improved world. And the reason that we haven't been able to do this in the past is we didn't have the technology. Now we have the bandwidth, we have the technology, we have fiber optics, and we can do more and more videos. So why are we not doing it? So what does this stand for? This is kind of the midpoint test so that people can, I'm trying to show people here that this is the power. These drawings aren't, you know, in color. They're not fancy, but these are done with a hypnotic style where you will remember visualization, diagnostic statements. So remember the acronym? Probably not, because people don't remember acronyms. In the agenda, I said we're going to learn the RTH formula. R stands for results, T stands for time, and H stands for how. That means nothing, right? Most of the stuff that's written at the cognitive level is how you do things, what you do. It's your toolbox. It's what you're selling. And your clients are having to try and figure out why do they care? But if you started out with results and timeline, like if you're going to save them $1 million in a month, and the timeline's important. People want to leave out the timeline. But if you see you're going to save $1 million, people will immediately start filling in the blanks. Well, I'm sure that's going to be over 30 years. But so you need to make sure you say, no, that $1 million is in a month because of what we do. And here's what we do. If you start out, remember those emails and you've got 3 seconds, if you start out with, you're going to save $1 million in a month, you don't think they're going to, that's all they're reading, right? They're going to open up that email to see how do I save $1 million in a month? Or if you're going to make $1 million in a month. So this is the RTH. Let this visual burn into your brain. The R is results, and the dollar sign represents results. The clock represents the timeline, and the toolbox is the how, and it's how everyone else is selling. And here's some examples. I'm going to make some statements, and by applause, you respond with, I can say this today. I wish I could say this today. It's not important to me. So we book, now this is a travel industry, right? So we book our events several years in advance because our team has learned how to translate vendor speak into client speak thanks to Visnostics. I can say this today. I wish I could say this today. Not important to me. I save money and sell more events on the phone today by helping clients visualize the fun they will have during their event in our city, while other cities must have them come visit to accomplish the same thing. I can say this today. I wish I could say this today. It's not important to me. So what this is actual presentation on websites that I looked at said that our clients come visit us to see our venues. Okay, so why do people care about that? Maybe that's inconvenient. Maybe they don't want to come see it. But if you can visualize and help paint a vision of what it's like, they're probably not going to get on an airplane today. They would love to choose a venue by not traveling at this point. And you're the #1 salesperson because Visnostics taught me to describe dreams and experiences instead of listing the number of hotel rooms, city rankings, and other statistics. I can't tell you how many websites I've gone on that says we have 332 hotels near the convention center, less than a block walk, blah, blah, blah. But why do they care about all that? So can you say these things today? Do you wish you could say this today? It's not important to you. This is a great story in the book about the trio. When I first had my career, I had this thing I called a porta office. I had to have a day timer, which was this big book that was a calendar where you kept all your appointments. It's so antiquated. I can't believe we did it. But man, that was like such an important tool in the sales world in the 80s and the 90s. So you had your day timer. I had because I traveled all the time, I had a camera and I had a video. They were 2 separate things at the time. They were 2 different devices. So I had to have all my charging cords with them. I had a cell phone, but I also had a pager. And I had to have all of those charging cords. And, you know, I have a laptop and all that went along with it too. Because a phone was, believe it or not, just a phone. You could do some primitive texting, but if you to text, you had to hit the #1 key 3 times to do a C. So texting was really painful to have to get those letters right. Well, this was an ad that was out in Fortune magazine. And I was like, are you kidding me? This is what? Oh, and I also had a Palm Pilot, which had all of my phone numbers in it too, because the phones didn't store phone numbers back then either. So all of these devices, this thing stored phone numbers because it was by Palm Pilot. The first one, the Trio, came out by Palm. And you could just hit a button and it would dial the number automatically. You didn't have to dial the number. And I could text message, look, it had a keyboard now. I didn't have to use the 1 and hit it 3 times for C. And like all these crazy things. I was like, I can get on the internet in the airport, because that was unheard of back then. Unheard of. But I could actually read my emails. I couldn't believe how much my life was going to be better with this device. So I bought it. And they broke. They were terrible quality, but their support was good. They replaced them, and I didn't care because my life was great. I no longer had to carry that extra office around with me. This was everything. I couldn't believe what a great invention it was. And then iPhone came out, and look how they marketed. The problem with the Trios and the Blackberries is they go back and look at this. These are features and functions. They're showing you all of this stuff, but they don't tell you any of this stuff I just told you. Nothing on here about why I would care. I had to translate it. But mothers and housewives and kids and not every profession, that maybe people that didn't travel didn't see the value in this because they didn't understand it, these features and functions. Then iPhone came out with a completely different ad. And they showed cool people doing cool things with this really unusual thing. They were listening to music. They were watching videos. And people went crazy for it. There was no keyboard. It was a touchpad. People went nuts. And all of a sudden, it was almost like overnight, iPhone dominated the industry. And it's because they were selling at a metacognitive level instead of a cognitive level. Cognitive, metacognitive. See the difference? So when I looked at travel industry websites, this is what I saw. If this is the way you're selling over here on the right with number of hotel rooms and your convention center specs and then in museums and restaurants and sporting things, this is not, this is at the what level? Cognitive level, which is called vendor speak. So how do you translate all that into client speak? Well, you call your clients. And the more diverse of a clients that you call, the better. Different age groups, different industries, different nationalities, different ages, different sexes. Make it as diverse as you can be and get their input onto why they love you. And by the way, remember that story that I told you about the artist where you said, tell me how to change your life. Be careful how you word this stuff. You want to trigger positive visualizations. You want to trigger positive brain chemistry. And guess what happens when you become the bell? Just by going to your clients and asking a simple question that says, tell me how we've changed your life for the better. Not a question, it's a directive. Tell me how we have changed your life for the better. Say the same statement to each one of these different people and gather that data. And then say, tell me how much money we've saved you. Tell me how much time we've saved you. Are you seeing where this is going? Again, you're triggering them to visualize how much money have they saved me. Oh my gosh, I never realized it because I never really added it up. And sometimes they'll have to get back to you, but you're sending them on a mission to, instead of you calling them up going, hey, we saved you $1 million, even if you know the answer. Help them figure it out. Remember what we talked about politics? Nobody wants to be told anything, but when you make people go and visualize it and come up to their own conclusions, a love fest happens because the brain chemistry is very different. These were actual things I found from the city of Fort Worth. And this was awesome. This is a Visnostic. And you remember the green dollar sign and the red clock? When I do a Visnostic, I try and do the fonts or highlight it in green when it's a result, and then the timeline in red, and then anything that's not a result or a timeline, that's the how. And this is a great exercise for you to go and take a look at your own marketing and your own wording to see if what you're saying is Visnostic. Look how impactful this is. We spent this is such a great story. We actually called a client during a workshop, and this client said that the reason they changed from another city, which I won't say who it was, to Fort Worth was because the transportation costs just getting from the airport to the venue was hundreds of thousands of dollars. But because there was this shuttle service and the train service directly to the conference center to Fort Worth, that $100,000 they spent making their experience, their conference better. So they had like a whiskey tasting, and they had the Bush women come and speak. So they had $100,000 extra to spend. And then let's talk about photographs. Even though I said that our brains prefer cartoons, if you have no choice but to use a photograph, let me tell you, you got to use the right ones. These are actual photographs that I found online. And I want to show you how much more effective this could be. First of all, nobody cares about the structure of the Dickies Arena, for example. They don't care. Look at this. Instead of that bed over in the top left-hand corner, imagine, look at this one over here. There's water in the bathtub. There's some kind of aromatherapy going on in the bed. There's candles. This is an experience versus a cold hotel room. So that picture up at the top is at a cognitive level, which is vendor speak. The one down at the bottom is how they've translated it into why they care, which is a client speak. So even photographs can be vendor speak and client speak. Look at that bathtub. Remember that bathtub? Vendor speak. Look at this one. I'm not saying that you have to have naked people in your pictures, but there's an experience going on here. There's wine and bubble bath, and look at that background, that view. I mean, this is an experience. What a difference between vendor speak and client speak just in a photograph. And then instead of a building and the structure, what about what's going on in the building? Look at that TCU game, and look at that concert. Look at the cowboy hats in the audience. You can feel a different feeling when you're talking about the experience versus the features and functions of a structure. So what I did was I went out to the TACV board, and I looked at who was on the board, and I went to their website. So I like catching people doing things right. And so I went to Visit Allen, Texas, and this is a great example of metacognitive client speak. I actually saw this too on one of the websites, which I thought was right in line with what I teach. Visit Plano, same thing. Look at this experience. And then I couldn't believe all of the graphics about experiences. Your eyes are just, it's like food candy. It's so fun to just look at all of the fun things you can do there. And Fort Worth, I loved this. This was actually a video. I took a screenshot of a video. So you've got the movement that I said our brains prefer movement, and it looped. So it just kept playing. I found myself watching this like 10 times before I finally kind of broke out of my trance. And that's what you want. That's what you want. And that is excellent brain chemistry. Again, inside, this is Billy Bob's. So instead of the Billy Bob's sign, see down there, I've got the big X through it, the exterior, show what's going on the inside. Fredericksburg, I had just gone on a trip to Fredericksburg when I had seen this website, and I thought this captured it perfectly because it was me and my husband did some wine tasting, and it was fabulous. And then there was some wording in Fredericksburg that was really good. It painted a visualization. And if you're going to use words, make sure it's a story. Make sure it's something that's going to engage emotions. Visit Lubbock. I think of Lubbock, I think of Texas Tech. So when I saw this picture, I thought, I never thought of going to Lubbock for a convention. That was great. This is great where you're showing things that especially if you have an image and you're a college town and people think that about your city, showing them things that they didn't know about is really impactful. And then this video, I actually played this during the presentation. I don't know who this girl is, but I want to know her, and I want to hang out with her, and I want to be her friend. And it was such a great capture of a moment of someone having fun. This website was so well done. I really want to go take a trip to Lubbock. So congratulations to those board members. They did a great job. Now for a test. And this is not a test for you. This is a test for me to prove to you how Visnostics works. What does this mean? If you said visualization diagnostic statements, you are correct. And this, fight or flight. And this, words are subjective. Don't use letters. The money exercise, people don't see letters, they see visuals. Again, don't use letters, or make sure your letters and your words match. And this is the what? RTH formula, the Visnostic RTH formula. And the R stands for results. The T stands for timeline. And the H stands for how you do it. And the R and the T are the metacognitive, or the client speak. And the H is cognitive, and it is a vendor speak. So at the beginning, I showed you this picture. You're going to increase your success, grow professionally, improve rapport, strengthen your communication skills, all this during a very short 45-minute presentation by learning how to translate vendor speak into client speak using the principles of neuroscience and Visnostics. And remember, I said this is what you're going to learn. You're going to learn how to articulate yourself and your message so that your clients or your audience, your spouse, whoever it is going to understand what your point is. These are the things we covered today. We talked about the history, the neuroscience, the power threes, the low attention spans, the fight or flight and how to not trigger it, memorization, helping your audience remember your message, the Visnostics and the Visnostic statements, the RTH formula, and all of these things. When you make your message at a metacognitive level, you're making it about your audience. They will have the right brain chemistry, which will make them love you. And then I tell a story about this is in my book. It's at the beginning of the book. But this mom and this daughter, they had this family recipe that was passed down for generations. And it was so hard to do because the weather had to be right, the oven had to be right, the meat had to be a certain amount of weight, it had to marinate a certain amount of time. All of the ingredients were very precise. And so they prepared this roast. And right before they put it in the oven, the daughter asked the mom, well, why did you just cut the end of the roast off? And she goes, I don't know. My mom always did it. So she called her mother and she asked her mom why she did it. Her mom laughed and said, honey, I don't know why you did it, but my pan was too small. And so this is what Visnostics and why it's so hard. I invented this and I still do it wrong daily. We are so imprinted on how to do this wrong that it's almost impossible to change. This isn't going to be an easy thing to do. But when you start thinking Visnostically, you're forced to put the client first. Your life is going to change for the better. So I showed you this slide at the beginning. This is what I ask from everyone that's watching this video. Go on social media and type in, if your company name or whatever it is that you're doing. In this particular event, it was the Texas Association for Convention and Visitors Bureau Visnostic. But type in your association, your company name with Visnostic and hashtag it, or just Visnostic and hashtag it. I don't care what you put it on. Whoever does the most posts about Visnostic, something that you learned from today's session, then you will win a free book. And I do track this because that's why the hashtags are so important, so I can look them up. If for every place, maybe you don't win a book, but for every place that you post it, I give you $2 off the book, up to the cost of my book. So you can get my book at cost if you will post on social media. So that's what's in it for you. Let me tell you why this is so important for me, because no one cares what's important for me. And that's what we forget as salespeople. What's in it for you, not what's in it for me. But what's in it for me is Visnostic isn't a word, and I'm trying to get it to be approved by the dictionary. And their response back to me is, if we see it more and more in social media, it will become a word. So you will be part of making Visnostic a word in the dictionary. So thanks for your time. I really appreciate it. And again, I never talk about who I am or what my accomplishment, what my credentials are, anything about me, because you don't care until you see the value. If you'd like to do a workshop, you'd like to learn more, this is an amazing team building exercise between sales and marketing. This is my contact information. And I'd love to hear from every single one of you guys. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.